Greetings, members of the Ally User Group community. This is your community manager, John Scott, and I'm providing this recording as a follow-up from our final event of the Ally Community Forum series, our virtual office hours, where I shared a little bit of an overview of our fall 2018 Ally usage stats. So these are data pulled from across all of our Ally campuses. It looks at student downloads of the alternative formats, as well as instructor engagement with the instructor feedback and guidance. Also try to pull in some stories, some anecdotes, and some insights from our Allied case studies as a way to kind of contextualize some of these numbers. But before I get to the numbers, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of the folks who participated in our community forum series. So we had a amazing group of accessibility, UDL, e-learning directors, personnel from across the campuses, from across the country who shared their experience and their insights into how they're using Ally for a more inclusive campus. So big thank you to everybody that participated, both as a speaker and also folks that were able to join one of the webinars for your questions and your participation. It was a really great series. The recordings are available on the forum series space on the user group site, so that's usergroup.ally.ac. You can find the recordings there. Also want to thank those campuses who have participated in one of our case studies, so our community stories. We've completed 5. We have a 6th in the works. These really span from Europe all the way to the west coast of the U.S., community colleges, state universities. Each tries to take a kind of a unique look at how a campus is rolling out Ally. Our most recent that's coming with Grand Valley State University actually looks at some of their usage data and how they leveraged that data to craft their campaigns, their messaging, and really their kind of adoption strategy. So be on the lookout for that. All of these are also available on the community site under the resources space. Again, that's usergroup.ally.ac. So taking a look at the data, organize the data across kind of three areas here. So the first is the student kind of section. And what I like to prioritize here is these notion of autonomy and choice. So these are key principles in universal design for learning, increasing student ability to choose how they engage with their course content, be it for their device, for their preference, for their need. That sense of autonomy as a learner, really important. Second area, we're thinking about the instructors, and are we seeing that culture shift for instructors in being exposed to the feedback to Ally? Are we seeing them take action in making fixes? Are we seeing them, prioritize accessibility in their course design, bringing it to mind? Again, for many of our instructors, accessibility may be relatively new to them. It may be something that wasn't a part of their practices previously. And so are we seeing through those indicators, through Ally's presence in the learning management system, some kind of culture shift? In the third part, we're going to look kind of at the institutional level at some of the strategies that institutions have put in place to really drive Ally adoption and to drive their inclusive learning initiatives. So beginning with the impact on students, and we're looking back around August 21st, so roughly around the start of the fall semester, we've seen over 700,000 launches of the alternative formats modal. So that means going to the drop down and loading up the alternative formats modal. So kind of a first exploration or exposure to, okay, here's where the alternative formats live. And of that 700,000, we've seen 335,000 downloads of the alternative format. So that's 335,000 times that a user made a choice to engage with their course content in a format that was different from the original. So drilling down into those overall download numbers, on the left side of the table here we can see the original file type, and then on the right we can see what alternative format was downloaded. So Word documents, 137,000 downloaded as an alternative format. Presentations, 91,000 downloaded as an alternative format. PDFs, 53,000 downloaded as an alternative format. And then when we look at the breakdown of those files, we see some pretty interesting things. So with Word documents and presentations, that tagged PDF is the most popular download. 104,000 Word docs downloaded as a tagged PDF, almost 77,000 presentations downloaded as a tagged PDF, and we suspect that, given Word docs and presentations in their native file formats may not open very easily on a mobile device, that tagged PDF is certainly going to be able to open up on the mobile. And that mobile usage is also kind of complemented here by the HTML downloads of those content items. So, 12,500 HTML downloads of the presentation, 31,000 of the Word docs. So we definitely see that push around mobile. When we're talking about, research saying, over 50% of students are accessing their course content using the mobile. There's some evidence here of that, and being able to choose a format that's going to work better with the phone is obviously really important. Also interesting here is that, when we, from an accessibility advocacy perspective, we often prefer the instructor to upload the content in the original file format, right? So we know we take that presentation and export it as a PDF, or take that Word doc, export it as a PDF. If it's not done correctly, it can very easily lose a lot of its accessibility features. It can also be much more difficult to remediate that content. But for instructors who got into the practice of exporting the PDF, they may not feel entirely comfortable with the readability or the usability of the file in its native format. So this can be something to say to instructors: hey, don't worry about the readability of the native format. Upload that to maintain the accessibility, to make it easier for everybody. If it needs to be remediated for a student with disabilities, knowing that, hey, you can download that tagged PDF, students can access it whenever they need it, and so they always can get a version that's going to work best for them. So nice way to drive home some of these accessibility best practices looking at this data. Of the PDFs, interesting, 6,500 OCR PDFs. So, that's 6,500 times that PDF document that was scanned, totally inaccessible to a student with a screen reader, became available in a format that's more accessible, that can be highlighted and annotated by students. And so nice to see that number there. 38,000 of those PDFs downloaded HTML. So again, evidence of that mobile usage. If we look across the formats, we are seeing some interesting uptake of the EPUB format. So 4,000 PDFs downloaded as EPUB, another 2,000 or so Word docs and presentations downloaded as EPUB. And I think that the EPUB is such a fantastic format. The ability to not only load it up on your Kindle or your tablet, but even opening it up on the desktop, being able to change the fonts, customize the background, do that deep annotating and highlighting. For those students with dyslexia maybe, who are really struggling with a document font, if it's a serif font or it's a kind of a weird font, that can really create challenges and barriers for dyslexics who may not disclose, to Disability Services Office that they are dyslexic. And so giving them the option to customize that font, research demonstrates pretty clearly that one of the best interventions to improve reading for students with dyslexia is to deliver that content in a font that's familiar to them, that they feel comfortable with, even more so than the actual dyslexia font. And so that's really interesting, and EPUB provides that opportunity for those students. Also seeing, pretty good uptake of the MP3 download. So, almost 4,000 PDFs downloaded as MP3, almost 1,000 each of Word docs and presentations. So that's, those students, they want to engage with their content in a different modality, or they are on the go, maybe going to the gym, or they're commuting long distances. So that MP3 download, it'll be interesting to see if that starts to increase as students become more aware about the availability of those alternative formats. Translated version. So the new alternative format available through Ally is the machine translated version. So this has been in beta now a couple of months. And we're already seeing some interesting uptake of those translated documents. one course, for example, that we came across, very dense readings, very challenging course readings, lots of international students that take that course, and so a lot of downloads of the translated format for those students. Being able to access it in their native language really can be key for them in better understanding that content. We are seeing a little bit of eBraille downloads, so that's pretty interesting. We haven't gotten to interact with any users that are using that eBraille, but if you're familiar with one and they'd be willing to share their story, we'd love to hear about how that's been working for them. Just as far as some of the stories that we're hearing from students and from campuses around that alternative format usage, here's a story from the Chico State case study. And this is a student, I love the quote. She says, "You gave me part of my life back." And this is a student, she's a mother of three, commuting a long distance to campus each day. And for her, being able to access that audio format, load it up in her car, and listen to her course readings during the commute, just a huge benefit for her and her learning. Obviously, this is not a student we typically think of as having a disability, but somebody that has a life circumstance, giving her this option, this choice. And in fact, she was exposed to the MP3 downloads in the alternative formats in a course that was piloting Ally. And when she went to her next course, it wasn't available yet, hadn't been released in that course. And so she started requesting from her professors, hey, please add Ally alternative formats to your course so I can get that MP3. So nice anecdote there about the power of that alternative format download. Another thing that we've been really thinking through is how engagement with those alternative formats can really improve study habits. And so not just downloading, one format for one content item, but downloading actually several formats for the same content item in order to activate different kinds of reading processes, different ways to reinforce and comprehend what's in the text. And so you can imagine, starting off with the tagged PDF on your desktop, just skimming that dense document, getting a sense of high level organization of the document. What are key points, key sections? Where do you need to focus? And then, bringing that focus by getting that EPUB version on the tablet or on the desktop, being able to annotate and highlight, change the background if you're suffering from screen fatigue and you need to kind of switch things up. But really this opportunity to go from that high level skimming to now deep analysis, deep annotation, really diving into the text. And then to complement that as a way to review, getting that MP3, now you're activating different neurological processes in the auditory nature of the listening to it. You're doing it on the go, maybe before bed or on your way to class. And so thinking about for students, how do they design their own kind of study process using those alternative formats? And this is really kind of UDL coming to fruition, those key principles. And so this will be an interesting thing to see and to try to relay to students about, hey, craft your study habits more strategically now that you have access to these alternative formats. We'll shift now to the instructor data. And so we're going back here to around August 5th. And so this is important. We're about 2 weeks, before the start of the semester, assuming that students are pruning their courses at this time, cleaning things up, getting ready for the launch of the semester. So over 280,000 times instructors clicked that Ally indicator and opened up the feedback and the guidance. And of that 280,000 launches, over 94,000 times the instructors attempted to make a fix to the file. So we're not only seeing kind of that awareness building, that first point of engagement with the feedback, but also the instructor taking action, making a step to try to make a fix. So when we look then at the breakdown of those total file fixes by content item, we can see, and not surprisingly, over 40,000 fixes to images. So that ease, being able to add in that alternative description directly through Ally, makes it so easy. So not surprising that this is the most common type of fix. 35,000 of those resulted in an improved score. So very likely there was no alternative description there, and they added one. They improved their score. Almost 5,000 resulted in the same score, so that this may be the instructors editing the description, changing the description in some way. Um, when we look then like at PDF, 11,000 total fixes to PDFs, 8,000 resulting in improved score, almost 3,000 in the same score. Pretty similar for document remediation as well. Again, around 8,000 improved score, around 2,500 with the same score. So again, the distinction there is improved score. They made a fix. Let's say they added their headers. They did so effectively. It resulted in a bump in score, whereas maybe the instructor was struggling with making the fix. Maybe they needed a little bit more support, maybe a little bit more help, and so that resulted in the same score. But I think pretty good overall numbers here as far as the improvements that are being made. And again, that first effort on the part of the instructor to make a fix. HTML files, just don't have too many of them in the LMS, so we don't see a ton of activity around native HTML files. Again, distinguishing here between your WYSIWYG content, which is currently not something that's fixed directly by the instructor. It's just providing the institutional reporting. These are your native HTML files. So when we think about that instructor file fixing funnel, August 5th to November 15th, 280,000 engagements, 94,000 fixes, that's almost a third of the time an engagement is resulting in a fix. 30, almost 33% conversion rate. So we think that's a really powerful number. You would expect the number to be low with a new product, new tool on campus. Instructors are clicking the indicators, becoming familiar, seeing what it does. But are they taking action? And indeed, we see that at a fairly decent clip here. Instructors are taking action to make a fix. They're making inclusive learning a priority in their teaching. And we see evidence of that in some of the feedback that's been gathered on campuses. So this is from the Washington State Board, their community and technical college system. Respondents on a survey reported 74% of the instructors that responded to that survey reported that Ally increased their awareness about accessibility. Jess Thompson over there from their central office, she talks about accessibility starting to be demystified. It's making good design sense for instructors. It's the reasons why you would prioritize this in part of your teaching are becoming more clear. And we see examples of success. An instructor at Olympic College, 2 courses, beginning in the 30% overall accessibility range, so fairly inaccessible, to the high 90% range. So going from fairly inaccessible to very accessible, getting high quality alternative format downloads from that material, ensuring that all students have access to content in a format that works for them. That's a big win. It's really exciting to see those kinds of results. Just looking at usage over a semester, so looking not just at the overall usage but usage over time, 2 interesting findings. The first, fairly intuitive. Instructor engagement is highest 1 to 2 weeks before the start of the semester. As I mentioned, instructors are likely pruning their course, prepping it for the semester. That usage then starts to dip as the semester goes on. They get busy with grading, with managing their course. So as far as thinking about a strategy for support, identifying that sweet spot, that time before the start of the semester for messaging, for outreach, for offering training and support, that's really, I think, demonstrated in the usage data that we're seeing. Also interesting, student alternative format downloads have remained fairly consistent across the semester. So why is that interesting? Well, when you thinking about rolling out a new technology, you would expect maybe a novelty effect, so lots of people downloading it early in the semester. But if that wasn't useful to them, if it wasn't meaningful to them, then you would see likely a sharp decline after that initial burst. So seeing that steady rate is some compelling evidence that, hey, students who are accessing those formats, they're finding them beneficial, they're going back and they're doing it again consistently. So interesting finding there. We'll see what it looks like as we come towards the end of the semester, if students are downloading more alternative formats to prepare for finals and to study. So we'll keep an eye out for how that usage changes over the next few weeks. Looking broadly now from the institutional level, kind of what are we seeing as far as initiatives, as far as progress. Here we're looking at a screenshot from the Technical College System of Georgia, their case study. They included this as part of their reporting. So this is looking at 22 colleges across their system and their increases in score from the fall 2017 to the spring 2018 semester. So you can see some schools that have made really significant jumps in their accessibility, and some that have made smaller jumps, and that can be based on the rollout strategies that they employed, how aggressive they were in their approach to supporting instructors and really enacting that initiative. Two of those schools that did take that very strategic approach, so they saw 36-point increases in a single term in their overall accessibility score. One of those schools, really effective strategy, they would look at their institutional report, identify a pressing accessibility issue based on the report, and then create monthly or weekly accessibility campaigns around that issue. So all of their messaging, their training, their outreach, all focused and targeted around a particular issue. So you're not overwhelming instructors, asking them to learn how to do all the remediation, all the file fixing all at once, but rather really scaffolding that learning, allowing them to develop confidence in their ability to make those file fixes. So really nice strategy there. Again, leveraging information from the institutional report to guide your strategy. We've also seen some really interesting evidence of how Ally institutional reporting is being leveraged to improve content remediation workflows. So again, going back to that Chico State case study, they report a 25% reduction in content remediation time using Ally. They did that through a ticketing system. It allowed instructors to file a ticket if they needed help remediating like a PDF, so a very challenging accessibility issue. But also with that ticketing system, if it was something easier that Ally provided guidance about and that they felt the instructor could fix on their own, they would use that ticket to send a message back to, really kind of try to walk the instructor through how to make the fix on their own. So trying to create a sustainable model for improving that content over time. Chico State, as well as other schools, have used Ally to train up student workers, so creating student worker teams to make improvements at that centralized content remediation level. So that's been really important. And then as far as that raising awareness piece about accessibility issues, how Ally kind of brings to the forefront for the instructor what the accessibility issues there are in their course materials. Several schools have reported an increased attendance of accessibility workshops and training. So we've seen that in the University of Derby case study, as well as mentioned during the forum series from Grand Valley State University. They're seeing that increase in faculty attendance. So again, that's part of that remediation workflow is creating or helping support instructors to fix files on their own. Really nice to see some of those results coming in. Another really interesting strategy that we've seen from a campus, this comes from Tacoma Community College, and it's mentioned in their case study, is to gamify the accessibility initiative. So they really went all in on this. They assigned point values to different accessibility items, and so one of those was reaching all green Ally indicators in their active course files, creating an accessible syllabus, using open educational resources, and so they assigned point values to each of those items. They rigged up a little campus faculty leaderboard so that instructors could have a bit of a social comparison game going on, where they could see how they stacked up as far as their pathway to accessibility. And they provided students, they provided instructors rewards and incentives for achieving those milestones. And the biggest reward once they had completed all the accessibility tasks were they lifetime rental of an iPad Pro. So they're getting a technology which incentivized them to take action, get support, make fixes, and they saw a 26% increase in their overall file accessibility in 2 months. So, and if it's, a lot of schools may not have the resources to give out an iPad Pro, But the idea of acknowledging instructors for taking the time to make the fixes, I think, is a powerful one, even if it's looking at your usage data, identifying instructors who took the time to make a fix, sending them a little email saying, hey, thank you so much for taking the time. Let us know if we can support you as you move forward. Acknowledging the instructors, I think, can go a long way in creating that buy-in and helping create that culture shift. What's upcoming? We're working now on a campus survey. So during the recording here, we've looked at the high level kind of usage stats. So we've seen big numbers in the hundreds of thousands. But what do those really mean as we contextualize them, as we dig into them more? So the idea with this campus survey is really to gain a sense from you as an institution where you're at with your ally rollout. What kind of messaging or communication strategies have you used? What kinds of professional development, training, and content remediation strategies have you used? How are you tracking your progress and your ally usage and impact? And so by getting a sense from you all of how you're kind of going about your ally rollout and implementations, we can start to map that to some of the usage data, and we'll actually follow up with some reports. We'll give you as an institution a sense of kind of how you align with other similar schools, institutions that have rolled out Ally. What kinds of strategies are we seeing result in the biggest impact, the biggest gains in accessibility, or the most usage? So really trying to use these insights from fall 2018 to help inform your strategies and your efforts in moving forward. So that survey will be distributed hopefully before the end of the year. You'll be able to find it on the user group site. And so with that, again, I want to thank you all for your participation in our Ally user group community. We're up over 1,500 users now. We see a lot of great conversation there, question asking, resource sharing. And so we thank you for your participation there and your participation moving forward as we really become a voice of advocacy for inclusive learning for all students. So with that, thank you so much for listening in on this presentation today, and I wish you all a great rest of your day. Thanks.